Good evening, good night, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you live. Welcome back to Achampnator reads The Last Elf. The last time we've read chapter 6, and today I will read two chapters, chapter 7 and chapter 8. Let's read. The water got into their mouths and ears. The little elf felt the cold and desperation filling everything. Desperation and fear can fill your head, and magic drowns in it. Then, all of a sudden, he had the idea of being a fish. He thought how to phrase it about fishiness without the pure uh, about the pure essence of an aquatic animal. He thought about the sensation of having gills, the pleasure of cold water, the joy of feeling yourself slipping, flying under the waves as a bird flies under the clouds. Breath filled with his lungs, and the coldness of the water became a delight. He let himself slip beneath the surface to avoid the pointed sticks that were raining down on the water, fired by all the archers in the Delagar garrison. He swam over to the others. The dog was managing quite well, but the man and the woman were doing stupid things, as usual. She kept putting her head under the water and he was trying to hold it up. The little elf tried to say that this wasn't the time to play at fighting, and then he explained the correct method. Allow the image of the fish to form in your head. Focus your attention on Giles, but the hunter wouldn't listen to him and was actually incredibly rude. Luckily, the current was going in the right direction. Far, far, even farther, far from Delagar, from its halberdiers and its hangings, toward the high plain and the hills. The landscape was getting gentler. There were stones along the banks and more reeds. The water wasn't so high, the current less impetuous. Finally, they managed to reach the shore and drag themselves out. The woman wasn't breathing well. The air coming out of her made a sound like water, a kind of gurgle that sounded like a boiling pot of beans. The hunter looked desperate. Water and mud were dripping down from his hair and into his face. And the little elf wasn't sure, but he could have sworn that the man's eyes and nose were dripping as well. Do something! Yelled the man. If you can't do something, please, you can do something. Can't you? She's dying. The little elf was stunned. He stretched out his hand and put it on the woman's face. The little elf felt water gurgling and the woman's throat was burning as though one of those pointed sticks had got into it. But the most horrible thing was what was in her head, a sensation that these were the last minutes that were everything was about to end. The little elf concentrated on breathing with all his might, air going in and air coming out. The smell of wet grass, of cane thickets, of mushrooms. The air goes in, it smells good, your lungs expand, the air goes out. Your head is filled with the scent of the air. And we know about this breath. It's not you know that this breath is not the last one. But afterward, there will be another, and then yet another. The woman coughed up a lot of muddy water, then opened her eyes and breathed. The little elf coughed, too. They were both shivering and extremely pale. The hunter smiled happily, then ran to fetch reeds and dry branches. When the pile was big enough, the little elf touched it with his finger, and the fire cheerfully began to blaze. They were cold and drenched, but the hunter went on collecting wood and the fire continued to grow. And gradually, the icy cold and wetness began to ease. The woman fell asleep. The hunter found some nuts in a squirrel's nest and shared them with the little elf. We have no weapons now, but we haven't been hanged, the man said. What a shame. We had to give up the chance to swing about in the air on the end of a rope. It would have been so nice. The man started laughing. We couldn't do it if you really want to. They haven't confiscated my rope. Now I'll show you. The branch is strong enough. I tie it here. Then there, then here. I'll tie the rope down double like this. There we are. Do you want to try? Hold on tight. Now I'll push you. It was wonderful. Up and down. Down and up. Canes, river, sky, then again sky, river, canes. There were hills in the distance, and beyond them the light of the setting sun. The little elf had never seen a sunset. There had always been clouds. Now everything was pink, and a few little long, thin clouds shone like a gold necklace. The last rays lit groves of chestnut trees that alternated with small cultivated fields. The most wonderful thing you could imagine, as wonderful as flying. The little elf was filled with happiness. The woman woke with a smile. The little elf laughed like a mad thing. Look, I'm being hanged, he said delightedly to the female human. No, she replied. This is called a swing. She stopped smiling. Being hanged is a horrible thing. She went on. They put a rope around your neck and pull it by using the weight of your own body. The rope tightens. The air can't get through and you die, just as I was doing with the water a little while ago. The little elf froze in astonishment. Then he slipped down from his improvised swing. His eyes were wide with horror. He turned gray. He gasped for breath. He crouched on the ground and began a long series of broken lamentations. The man and the woman felt ice beneath their skin. Why did you tell him? The man was furious. He was happy for once in his life. He was happy! Because he will meet other men, and because the next humans he meets will want to hang him too for being an elf. And I don't want him to go along with it happily, convinced that the gallows is a swing. Better to be unhappy, but alive. The woman picked up the little elf and hugged him. The lamentations gradually ceased. The first stars began to shine. The gentle profile of the hills stood out against the sapphire sky. She put the little elf on the swing and started gently pushing him once again. You can start being happy again if you like. You've just got to remember that if men catch you, they'll hang you. And then will they eat me with rosemary? No. Without rosemary? Men don't eat elves. Never. So why would they want to hang me if they weren't even going to eat me? That's not nice. No, 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 no. And why would they bother? The swing rocked gentle. Because all men hate elves. Why? A long silence followed. The swing swayed gently. The dog yawned. Because it's your fault. What's our fault? Everything. Everything? Well, all the things that go wrong. The shadow, the rain, the water covering the earth, the famine, or children are dying of hunger, and it's your fault. Villages have been swept away by the water. We make it rain? How? The little elf was indignant. How? How should I know? Maybe by thinking about rain. If I could cause rain by thinking about it, I could think about a blazing sun to dry my feet. And then, the little elf said urgently, we would really be stupid, because water and misery overwhelm us as they overwhelm you, or more so. Why did Grandma not think about the sun while the water was rising and rising? Why did Mama not think of staying with me when she was going to the place from which you don't come back? The little elf started crying again. A quiet whimper. Well, the hunter seemed perplexed. Everyone says it's your fault. He turned toward the woman in search of help. The woman was standing near the swing. She was frowning slightly, but not angry or sad. We despise elves because you're cleverer than we are. You're unbearable, but clever, she concluded. You've got magic. You know more things. Where we see drawings, you see words. I think we're afraid of you, and because we don't know exactly when you can show your powers, we think you must be terribly powerful. Our powerlessness is so complete that the little elf had stopped crying. While we are on the subject of knowing how to do things, the woman went on, how did you always manage to work out the right key to slip into the lock? The little elf looked puzzled. The, the right key in what sense? He asked with interest. Now it was the woman's turn to be puzzled. Well, the one that fit perfectly with the machinery of the lock in question and therefore opened it. To slip into the lock? The little elf was startled. Ah, really? You have to put it in? And it fits. That means it sits snugly, am I right? The little elf was thinking so intensely that his forehead wrinkled. Then his face brightened. I get it! He cried. Right, he cried. There's a key for every lock. You slip it in, and if it's the right one, it sits snugly in the mechanism. And when you turn it, it slides the horizontal piece of iron that blocks the door. It's ingenious. Truly ingenious. Incredibly intelligent. For humans, really. Grandma always said that the most you'd ever manage was putting a capital on a column. But in fact, you can also be ingenious. It's brilliant. Thanks, the hunter said curtly. The little elf rocked happily back and forth on his swing, proud of the new knowledge he had just acquired. But how did you manage to open it if you didn't know about the key's fitting? Asked the woman. I put the key to the lock, and then in my head there was the door opening, and then, clank, the door opened. Does that mean you knew how to open locks? Without keys? Without rats? Without anything? The woman asked. The little elf went on swinging lazily back and forth, still frowning. Yes, he burst out laughing. How funny! We risked being hanged and I knew how to open locks all the time. Terribly amusing, observed the hunter. I am clutching my sides. His tone was that of someone who has choked on a piece of corn. Still swinging, the little elf went on thinking about their escape. All of a sudden, he remembered something. The prophecy! The curlicues on the portico? Yes, the spiral letters, second runic dynasty. Now I remember. When the water covers the earth, the sun will vanish, the darkness and the cold will come. When the last dragon and the last elf break the circle, the past and the future will meet. The sun of a new summer will shine in the sky. And then there was something about the last elf having to marry somebody. End of chapter 7. Chapter 8. What does it mean? The woman asked. I don't know. I think it might mean. The little elf broke off. The dog had jumped to his feet and was snarling at something in the distance. Oh, look, a moving tree, said the little elf. It isn't a tree. It's a troll, the woman whispered. Really? That's a troll? I've never seen one before. The little elf looked overjoyed. What are the two bushes behind the troll? Are they baby trolls? Do trolls have babies as well? Those things behind him are the two biggest and most heavily armed humans I have ever seen, the hunter replied, backing away. But it was too late to run. The two giant bushes had them cornered. These giants looked a bit like the hunter. They had the same clothes made of rags and animal skins, and some daggers. But the really striking thing about them was their axes. Little dark ones, the size of a hand, huge, great wood axes that would have cut off a head with a single blow. Two-bladed hatchets of various sizes with wooden handles, and all of them keenly honed. But as tall as the giant stood, the troll was even more enormous. It towered over them, and in the fading light, its cyclopean shadow engulfed the tree and the swing and the little elf who was rocking back and forth on it. The dog's growls made way for a whimper of terror. Stay where you are, ordered the hunter menacingly. He's an elf, a real elf, he went on, pointing to the little elf, a little one. His magic can burn you like a flame, topple you like a hurricane. He can close your throat so that you can't breathe any better than a hanged man can. It's not true, 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 it's not true. No, 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 the little elf protested. Why did the hunter go on saying such horrifying, horrible, horrendous things? It isn't true that we do those things. We don't hurt anybody. We've never hurt anybody. We can't hurt anybody. Because if we hurt somebody, the hurt we have done, which is outside our heads, goes into our heads. Because everything that is outside our heads is inside our heads. And everything that is inside our heads is outside our heads. The little elf had enough of being run down by everybody. He had enough of everyone speaking ill of him and his race, and this was the last straw. The hunter for once was speechless. The two giants were speechless as well. They looked at the hunter, then at the little elf, then again at the hunter. Then the little elf, then the hunter. Funny sort of weapon, the bigger of the two giants said to the hunter. Are you paying for something you did in the former life, or do you have another reason for dragging an elf around with you? The two new human arrivals seemed genuinely baffled. I must have sold my father, the hunter agreed. Troll eat elves, spluttered the troll, drawing closer. The dog whimpered, increasingly terrified, but bravely added a growl to his whimper. You can't eat him. He's just a puppy, said the hunter. A little one, said the woman. Born lately, the little one explained. Troll eat elves, the troll repeated. The little elf began to laugh. Yes, of course, with rosemary. That's called irony, he beamed. The troll was dumbstruck. He went on staring at the little elf's face with a smile stamped up in it, as he might have watched a donkey flying or the moon coming down to play football. The little elf approached the troll. Its huge face was completely expressionless, like the mask of a stone idol. The little elf was so used to finding himself confronted by frowning, angry, or worried faces that he felt reassured by his granite blankness. The troll's skin was scaly, like that of a lizard. Lizards, which are pretty animals, and of which the little elf was particularly fond, because lizards live in the sunlight, and sunlight is beautiful. The troll's face, too, was very like a lizard's, and like a lizard's skin. The troll's skin was covered with iridescent, patches of green and purple, which were the little elf's favorite colors, because they were the colors of his grandmother's curtains, when elves were still allowed to have curtains. The great fangs that emerged from the troll's jaw and pointed upward gleamed like crescent moons, and didn't worry the little elf in the slightest, because, convinced as he was that anything you used for biting was inside your mouth rather than outside it, he took them for decorative elements, unless they were for holding donuts, either as a kind of mobile dispenser or in more festive fashion as a pole in some kind of a game, in which you had to throw donuts over the poles. That's That thought filled his mind with joy. The joy gurgled like water boiling in a pot, and then, also like water boiling in a pot, it bubbled over so that everyone could enjoy it. "How handsome you are," the little elf said to the troll. The sound of his voice, full of tenderness and cheerfulness, resonated in the minds of his listeners. Everyone picked up on this moment of joy and belief in life, produced by such a beautiful creature as the troll. "How big you are! You're the first troll I've ever seen, you know? You're impressive. Yes, impressive. Grandma didn't tell me that a troll could be so handsome." "Huh, huh, handsome?" The troll began to recover from his initial shock. It had almost stopped breathing. For a few moments, it seemed that it was changing its expression. Or perhaps it would be more correct to say that it was assuming one. "Handsome, yes. Even Grandma said she'd never seen one. A troll, I mean. What was it? What was it Grandma used to say? That the first troll you meet is also the last one. Who knows what that means? Doubtless that there aren't many trolls, so that if you see one in your life, you're not doing too badly. Which means it's good luck to see a troll. I'm so happy. Happy! I haven't met just any troll. I've met one who's so handsome. Handsome!" "Ha, ha, handsome," bleated the troll. "Is it true that you are always traveling and you never stop?" the little elf went on. "Is it true that you've seen the world, the whole world, even beyond the hills? Is it true that you've seen the sea? Is it true that the sea exists? You know, the big water everywhere like a field. Except instead of grass, there's water. It must be lovely to be a troll. It must be really lovely, and on top of everything else, to be so handsome." "Ha, ha, handsome?" spluttered the troll. "Yes, so handsome. And it's an honor to make your acquaintance. My name is Josh Grung Squaggle Jonastring. I sorry you have cough. You say again me handsome. You're very handsome, very handsome, very handsome." The little elf was truly enchanted. His voice was growing dreamier and dreamier. It must be nice to be so handsome. "Elf good dinner, but this elf say me handsome." "Anyway, I don't believe these stories. I know you'd never eat me. You're just doing irony." The woman was white in the face. The hunter, too, who knowingly never lost his composure, was extremely pale. "We'd have been better off staying in Delagar," he said. "At least we'd have had one last meal before they hanged us." "How much did you get for your father?" asked the bigger of the two giants. "Lousy deal," the hunter replied gloomily. The little elf approached the two giants. Anyone who went about with somebody equipped for the transportation of donuts or for target throwing could only be infinitely peaceful and kind. Not like this hunter who went around with a bow and arrows and daggers, and who was always so irritable. "Are you lumberjacks? Really?" The elf asked. "Lumber what?" "Who? Us?" The two giants grew more and more alarmed. "Lumberjack carpenters." The little elf happily ran his little hand along the sharp blades of the axes, hatchets, and choppers. "You turn the branches of dead trees into things for living people, cradles and rocking chairs. My grandma had a rocking chair. It was a rocking chair with my cradle attached to it. So when she rocked me as well. Do you make rocking chairs?" As he thought about rocking chairs and toys, the little elf's mind filled with tenderness. He felt a boundless need for normality, for the everyday, for home. Once more he felt a longing for the mother he had never known, and the grandmother who had left him. All of that boundless tenderness overflowed from his mind and into his voice. The others all felt as though honey were flowing through their veins. They wanted it to go on like that, for the honey to keep on flowing through their veins. They wanted that sudden good feeling of being loved to go on forever. Well, the two giant humans were still hazy. More or less. And toys? Do you make toys? Dolls? Rocking horses? The little elf asked. Toys? Giant number one asked. What? Us? Dolls? Giant number two chimed in. Have you never made a rocking chair or a cradle to go with it? The little elf asked. No, not yet. It's never occurred to me, Giant number two added. You could. It's a good idea. A kind idea, the elf suggested. Yes, a kind idea, Giant number one agreed. And you never carved trees that aren't dead yet? No, never, said Giant number two. We kill them first, confirmed Giant number one, so they don't get hurt. It must be nice to be a woodcutter, and being a farmer must be a lovely job as well. Where first you have land, and then there's grain. It's been nice meeting you. He's so handsome, and you're kind. Kind? Giant number one asked. Handsome? The troll asked. The two giants looked at one another, then shrugged. The darkness was becoming blacker and blacker. A very light rain set in. For that night they all stayed together around the little fire that the little elf had lit, beneath a kind of improvised roof made of branches that the two giant woodcutters had cut with their axe blades. The dog and the little elf slept cuddled up together, like two interlocking commas. And after them came, in sequence, the three mountains, the smaller of the two giants, the bigger of the two giants, and finally twice the size of the other two sleeping figures, the troll. The hunter and the woman were on the other side of the fire. The two giants were snoring. The troll muttered in his sleep, ha, 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 ha. Is he going to go on making that laughing noise all night? The hunter asked in exasperation. The minute he stops bleeding, he'll skin us, replied Saria. If I were you, I wouldn't complain. The hunter stopped complaining. The laughing noise of the troll merged with the quiet snoring of the other two. The woman turned over in her sleep and almost brushed against the hunter, who remained motionless until dawn, for fear of waking her and making her move away. Curled up between the dog's paws, the little elf wondered whether Little Troll might be a good name for a dog. It seemed pretty, but the dog didn't have donut holders on either side of his mouth. Then he fell asleep and dreamed of the sea. Alright, everyone. That was the two promised chapters. Next time we continue with chapter 9. But for now I say good night, good afternoon, good morning, or good evening, wherever you live, wherever you come from. See ya.